All right, we have a word problem that we have to solve. So let's go ahead and read it so we can determine a strategy that will allow us to solve. So the problem reads, after reaching cruising altitude, the pilot increased the altitude of the plane by 2.124 kilometers to avoid turbulence. Once the plane passed the turbulence, he decreased the altitude by 0.895 kilometers. Which of the following best describes the altitude of the airplane after the turbulence? All right, so before this airplane hits turbulence, it has an initial cruising altitude, and that is not given. All that is given is it says that once this plane hits turbulence, is that it increases its altitude by this many kilometers. So whatever its cruising altitude is, once it hits rough weather, it has to climb up, which is a gain of 2.124 kilometers. So then the airplane would be at this elevation right here. Now, once the plane passed the turbulence, the pilot decreased the altitude by this many kilometers. So at this elevation right here, the plane drops 0.895 kilometers, which is a decrease. So that means that the plane is now cruising at this level. So the plane is now higher than what it was before the turbulence. And what we have to do is figure out which of these best describes the altitude after the turbulence. All right, so we already know that the plane is going to be higher than what it initially was because it had more of an increase in altitude than it did a decrease. So we know it's going to be above whatever this initial cruising altitude was. So it might be this one because it says above, or this one. So we can eliminate the two choices that say below the initial cruising altitude. All right, because one of these numbers is an increase and another is a decrease, we have to use our integer rules and subtract. Whenever the signs are different, we subtract the two numbers. So let us go ahead and take 2.124 and subtract it with 0.895. Now we know it's going to be either this first choice or the last choice. And because we're subtracting, we obviously can tell that it's not going to be this number that's bigger than 3. We know that if we start with 2 point something and we subtract something from that, we're going to get something smaller than this initial number, which means that this must be the right choice right here. But if you wanted to go ahead and show the work, what you could do is you can notice that none of these digits down here can be subtracted from the smaller numbers above. So like I would turn this 4 into a 14, which means I would have to borrow from the 2 and turn it into a 1. But I cannot take 9 away from 1, so this 1 becomes an 11. All right, so then we would have to borrow 1 from this one, which would give us 0. And we cannot take 8 away from nothing, so the 0 would become a 10, and we'd have to borrow 1 from the 2, which would leave us with 1. So then we would do 14 minus 5, which is 9, 11 minus 9, which is 2, 10 minus 8, which is 2. We drop our decimal straight down, and of course, 1 minus nothing is 1, giving us our 1.229 kilometers above the initial cruising altitude.